am so excited to have you on today to talk about the topic of emotional freedom. Most people, including myself, get really hooked on the topic of financial freedom or freedom from a job or freedom from where they need to live, like a certain location. But one thing you taught me is that until you have emotional freedom, you are forever a prisoner. So, yeah,
Yeah, tough
yes.
thing.
So, I would love to start with you telling us a little bit about who you are, Soren, and what you do, and what your definition of emotional freedom really means to you.
Yeah. Okay. I'm Soren. By now, I'm 44 years young. I live in Hamburg, Germany, in the middle of the city in St. Pauli, which is, you can't be much more in the heart of Hamburg than this. But I was traveling a lot and it took me a while to really get to know myself. And I left Germany 2017. I realized I was working 20 years already and I wasn't happy. And still, I always had
Mm.
this drive. There's more, there's more. You have to leave, you have to leave. And I had a bad breakup and kind of like my whole life fell apart. And I was like, how did this happen? How did one breakup could ruin my whole life, that even I, who was already very reflected and giving so many people so many tips and tricks and stuff on life, and everybody was like, what happened? So I packed my stuff, I sold everything, went on a boat to Panama, and then I was living in Colombia, Medellin for 3 years, where then people came to me and they said, why don't you work as a coach? This is how I became a coach. So people pushed me almost to become a coach. And what happened was that when I did different plant medicine, ayahuasca, mushrooms, and stuff like that, I immediately got downloads. So I learned when I let go and I'm not in control through my body. I receive a lot of information about the people around me, but also about myself, which then helps the people to uplift, to change, to really get back on track, to get back into their power. And it all had to do with emotions. And I was like, out of a
Mm,
sudden realizing we are also trapped by our emotions. So, how
mm,
can we learn to see emotions as something that we have instead of something that we identify with? And then, out of a sudden, almost like a domino effect, I saw how much we are taught in our communities, in our society, in our world to identify with our emotions. But it's something
mm,
that it's almost like you're the victim to your emotions and you can't do anything
mm.
about it. So then I started my journey and I had my first clients. And with my clients, I started to grow as well. And now I'm back here in Germany. And I live here with my partner. And I'm just working as a coach now full time, which I love. I help people to get back on track and to really get back into their own power. And one of the
Mm,
things I love to say the most is I want to help you to get back into your emotional freedom and at the same time to become your own coach.
mm. Love that. And that you do. I can
Yeah,
attest to
and that's how we met,
that.
right?
That's how we met. Yes. And okay, well, why do you think that we as a society look for financial freedom before we look for emotional freedom?
Well, I think I could answer this in so many ways, but the easiest way would be if you watch a movie, you think about the happy end, about somebody who was broken in the beginning. It mostly in all the movies, but it ends with them either being rich and happy or getting the girl or the guy and being happy. So it's kind of like this thing that we learn, or even with Cinderella, right? You want to be the princess, but then you have to go through all the trouble, and then in the end, you can live in a big castle and you're a princess. You're so rich, and then you think you're happy. But then
Mhm.
nobody really looks at it. Some people really look at it. And I once heard a podcast about some of the most richest people in the world. And somebody was asking them, so you already have so much. What do you still need? Tell me 5 things you still need to be really happy. And they told them 5 things. And then 3 years later, they did ask them the same question. And then they already had reached these 5 things. And then they had 5
Mm-hmm.
new things, which then shows no matter how rich you are, if you're not emotionally free, you're also a victim
Mm-hmm.
to your money. And you're never really happy because you never really get there, because there's always something more, something else, something better. And you're never really happy here in this moment. So what I want to say is you can be rich and be happy with that if you're not the victim to your own money, but you're emotionally free in a way that you can say, this is how I feel. I went through all this stuff. I understand myself now. I know where this is coming from. I really explored this vehicle of myself, which includes all the emotions. And yeah, so when you're really, it's almost like really moving into your whole system, understanding it. It's like sometimes in coaching, I think with you too, I use this example of having a huge castle, and that's your life. And you can decide to go into different rooms and to learn to get to know these rooms and why you don't want to go in there. And only if you really know as many places in your house as possible, you understand yourself and you decide which room you want to go into, which rooms not, and which rooms are not as bad as you think they are because you stayed a certain while in there. So you start to clean up your house, right? Otherwise, you always meet people who just magnetized to your problems or the emotions that you haven't cleaned up yet. And you still have to do it again and again and again and again.
This concept of like, I'll be happy when. And even when I was like so aware of it, it doesn't matter where you move. It doesn't matter how much money you make. It doesn't matter if you get the boyfriend. Like, you are still a prisoner. And we would like draw out the
I
prison
remember
because,
I said it
yeah,
doesn't matter.
yeah,
It's not about the
yeah,
city. It's not about Miami or Medellin or New York. It doesn't
yeah,
matter. You have to really get it. And the
yeah.
moment you get it, it doesn't matter where you go.
We can get so trapped in that. I'll be happy when. I think that is such a good example of emotional freedom is we trick ourselves to think that at each point, if we get the thing, we'll then be happy. And you cut right
Yeah.
to the core, I think, with people of really helping them to see that these checklists will go on forever. And I think that's so
Yeah.
important.
It's almost like you have all the emotions there and you can learn to activate them in a certain way. And either you put them on their glasses and then you see everything through these glasses and you don't understand because you're a victim to your emotions, or you activate them in the moment you need them, right? Sure, sometimes I get angry and yell at my partner, or you're in the streets and you get angry, but at the same time we always have this option to be the observer of what's going to happen. I don't have to be in there. And studies have shown that usually if you have an emotion, it's if you let it go, it only stays in your body for 90 seconds. So if it stays longer in your body, you're actually holding on to it. So just the chemical reaction in your body is 90 seconds. So we can actually learn and train our body to be like a vessel, to let the emotion come in, to see, oh, it's coming, I'm angry. What is not at ease here? How did I get off track? Okay, he said this and that. Now I feel shame. Now I feel pain. So let me ask the question to make sure what's going on here. And instead of going then into the emotion, to use it like a guide to stay on track. And what we learned, especially as men, but also as women, is all the good emotions are super cool. Happiness, fun, smiling, all this stuff. That's what we want. But then when it's about sadness, anger, all the negative ones that we say are negative, we don't want to look at it and we just want to push them away. In my opinion, no emotion is either positive or negative. They are just helping us to figure stuff out. And especially the ones that we say negative are the ones that are like breadcrumbs. They want to show us, that's where you should go. That's where you can get better. That's where you can adjust it
Mm.
and then become a better version of yourself. So we have to learn to go both ways, all the ways. And just to prepare for today, I was like, a lot of people, when you ask them, how are you? They just say either good or bad. So it's almost like we have
Mm-hmm.
two options, yes or no. But
Mm-hmm.
then if I ask you, how do you feel today? It's a different question. And then you have way more opportunity to answer. I don't know if you know this, but if you usually ask friends, what do you think, how many emotions we have? People come up with like 10, maybe if they're good, they come up with 15, but there are actually more than 34,000 tiny emotional options that we have. So it's like a huge
Mm.
range and they all want to help us.
Mm. On that subject of emotions, anxiety and depression, my mission is to really help spread the message that anxiety and depression are messengers. And you just touched on it. These emotions are here to guide us. What
Yeah.
is your opinion of someone who's really suffering from anxiety and depression, and how do you help somebody navigate?
Yeah. Um, the picture that I have when I think about anxiety is that you have so many thoughts and they're all swirling around your head that you can't really see anymore. And
Mm-hmm.
and out of this picture, I got another picture, and that was like, do you know these little snow globes that you can put on your table? So when you wheel them, there's snow, so you can see the skyline, right? So what happens here is that you have so many thoughts and so much going on in your system that you get lost in it. It's almost like you're in the tornado, you're in the storm of all these emotions, all these questions, whatever it is that keeps you busy in your mind, and you can't really see clearly anymore. And what a lot of people do, and especially I experience that with all my American clients, as they go to the doctor and they say, I have anxiety, what can I do? And nobody tells you, well, learn to meditate, take a
Mm-hmm.
long walk, listen to your breath, calm down, sit down this globe of snow and wait until the snow fell down so you can see your skyline again. No, the first thing they say, yeah, take this medicine, take this medicine, take this medicine. And what happens then, this medicine is almost like you put a beanie on top of your snow globe. So it kind of like makes it a little bit more cozy, but you're still confused. You're kind of like tricking your body, not really dealing with it. And
Mm-hmm.
and especially with anxiety, it's like when you have a task and this task has 20 different tasks and it's so hard for you to organize them, you feel overwhelmed. And that's what I think is anxiety, that you have so much going on that you're so overwhelmed, you don't know where to start. And then sometimes it just helps to stop for a moment and allow yourself to let go of all these thoughts and just be in the moment. Really arrive here in this moment. And I just had a coaching and I asked my client, what is the one thing that you learned the most with me? And she said, breathing, just taking a breath to calm down and be here
Mm-hmm.
in this moment. And sometimes it's just that, so we can realize all my thoughts are here. It's so much. Let's calm down the storm so I can then decide where to start. But if I put medicine in, I even numb my body, and then it's even harder to work with that. And that's how you lose
Mm-hmm.
so much of yourself, even though
Mm-hmm.
you think it's going to help you. So yeah,
Yeah.
especially with depression and anxiety, we're getting lost in all this and we start to identify with it, and then it is really hard sometimes to help the client to step out and realize, oh, it's just a snow globe, it's shaking, and you have the opportunity to step outside. You become the observer, you can look at it and then make decisions.
Mm. On the subject, yeah, pharmaceuticals, you were a big reason I ended up, not taking them. And I think such a big part of it is the ownership of your life, and that we are the only ones that can actually change it, and that we actually don't have to identify with these labels that society gives us, like an anxious person or panic disorder or this and that. And, controversial topic for sure. And there's always, for me, there's always a place for Western medicine. And I always give credit where credit's due. But that concept, you definitely really helped me with taking control of my life, and that I didn't need the medicine. It was a choice, and that I could overcome these things. I would love for you to speak on that as well, that process with me and other people, what it looks like to help somebody take ownership and reclaim their body and their mind.
Yeah. It's while you were saying that, in my head, I realized there are three steps that I usually motivate the client to go to. And the first step is that you decide, I take ownership that I want to look at it.
Yeah.
And then the second thing is to really see what is there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You don't yet have to do anything, but to say, I want to look at it. It hurts. Now I see it. I see what this is doing. And then the third step is to make a decision. What do I do with this? I had clients, and I work in seasons. So I have them for 11 sessions or 10 sessions usually. And I had once a client that in the end, he wanted to look at it and he saw everything on the table, but he didn't want to change it. So I said, now that's a good thing because you can stop whining about it. Because if you own it and you say, this is my shit, but I'm going to own it, then you're back in power. But if you're just sitting there and saying, this is all my shit, and you're whining, it should be different, but you're not doing anything about it, then you're a victim to it. So what do you want to do? And we had the same discussion when I almost dropped you, that I said, we can sit here and I can listen to the drama again, but you can also take ownership and look at it and say, oh, this is my drama. Let me stop it for a second and think about, do I really want to talk about it? And how can I change it now? And that's where the power of coaching comes in for me, because only if you want to change something, I can give wind into your sail so that you get really good into you can kind of like build momentum on this and feel it. And that's why I also do these orientation calls with clients first, to really see, do they really want to look at it, and are they brave enough to then make decisions for themselves? Because if you want to change your life, you really have the opportunity to change your life, which means you're going to change it. So take this energy and start going, especially when you have someone by your side who can support you with that. It's the sentence, I take 100% ownership of my life, or I take 100% responsibility of my life, even when I'm whining and then I'm like, do I really want to whine? And out of a sudden you change it and you come back into power and you get out of the victim mode.
That's why I love coaching. Therapy is amazing in its own right, but there was a lot of times where I would be analyzing and talking a lot about these things. And I feel with coaching, it was really this level of accountability. Like, do you want to change? If so, let's enter this container and I'll help you go from A to B. Whereas therapy was so instrumental for me for the early years with the awareness to even be able to like express what was going on and process my emotion. But coaching is really the vehicle for accountability and change. The victim mentality doesn't always look like a whiner. Sometimes it's just in the way we see the world. It's not always like outwardly whining. So it can be really tricky, I feel. And having a coach really help you to see you're still living from that lens of victim, or you're not really ready to take ownership of your life. And when you are, let me know and I can help you. I think that reframe is crucial.
And that is what it's about to learn. It doesn't mean that just because you see it, you're not going to step into it anymore. But then what I love the most working with my clients is then to learn the markers. How do I step into it? When do I fall over? What are the things that trigger me to go back into the storm, right? So, and also at the same time to give it a name. It's because as soon as you give it a name, you're not in it anymore. It is something that you talk about, right? And you're like, I remember.
So true. You were labeling it the loop, you call it, or 9/11. And the loop was like it was just constantly getting stuck back in the thought process of like, I have to do this to be happier. I have to do this. And it's very, our patterns are so tricky, but labeling it the loop or 9/11, that was really a big tip that helped me to break out of the loop or the drama.
Yeah. I remember we called it the lane of 9/11 because all the drama was already lined up so that
Yeah.
when you finished one of the drama, the next one already came. So it was like,
Yeah.
if you give it or when we talked about the loop, it's like when I'm in it and I'm talking about it and I'm just woo, 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 and then to realize, oh, I'm in the loop. And in the moment you say it's the loop, it's already outside of you and it's something you can have control over. And then
Yeah.
each client has a different picture. Each client needs different wordings. And that's
Yeah.
sometimes to figure out what is the one thing that really gets you where you're like, oh, okay, let's stop it. Let's get out of it. Or I had a client where I said, why do you always go into a car and let yourself drive around? Why don't you just have your own car? Right? It's was a female client. What we learn from society, what we learn from movies and stuff is that you need a man to drive you around, right? And we don't even have so we don't really learn that there's an opportunity. I could have my own car or my bicycle or whatever. I can choose my own vehicle and decide who's going to jump in with me, right? Or I had another client who was in these depressing thoughts. And he then said at some point, it's like driving around in this depressing car all the time. And I said, why don't you just get out? And
Yeah.
so in that moment was born that he's now talking about, oh, I'm not stepping into my car today, but I know it's there. And that's
Mm.
also a big part. Coaching and growth is not about to kick these things out of our lives. It's about understanding them and reintegrating them and then using them because they want to help you, right? Sometimes it's good to have a car in a certain car and then at some point to use it then for good stuff because you have felt all this stuff. And that's how I'm a coach. I have my story, which was also dramatic and negative and depressed and suicidal mother and, all and highly sensitive in its surrounding that wasn't sensitive. All this helped me to now really feel into my clients and see what do they need, what are they telling, what's their system telling me while they are talking, and then to give them
Mm.
food on it.
What are some signs of achieving emotional freedom?
It usually starts so in the beginning, people come into my sessions and they say, oh, and this happened, and this happened, and then this happened, and blah, 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 right? And
Yeah.
then I give them these tools. And then you feel there's a shift how they come into the session and they're like, so yesterday this happened, and then I did this, and now I'm here and I cleared it up. So out of a sudden, what happens is they learn to understand and see it, make a choice about it, and then clear it up themselves. So they come back and tell me how they cleared it up, but now it's okay. Or another way I detect this is because I usually not asking my clients, how do you feel today, good or bad? I ask them on a scale of 1 to 10, where do you put yourself today? And usually all the clients who start working with me are around 4 or 5 because all the drama happened. And for me, the biggest goal is that they come in and they say, I have a 7 and I have all the drama going around, but I'm still a 7 because I'm not in the drama. This happened, the car broke down, da, 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 but I'm still a 7, which then shows I have a distance to it. It can happen around me, but it doesn't have to be completely me. So I have emotions, but this is also how we frame it. We learn to say, I am so angry. I am so happy. But it's actually
Yeah.
something that we feel. So I feel happy. I feel angry. And to learn to have this distance again.
You mentioned American clients, right? And I'm curious, do you feel American clients have more trouble with emotional freedom, or is it more of a global issue?
I think we all have this challenge, no matter who you
Yeah.
work with and where you're coming from. If life is a game, I think this is where we level up to the next level. the more emotions we actually learn to deal with, helps us to understand more about ourselves. If I discover new emotions that I deal with and out of a sudden they are my friend instead of my enemy, it means I discovered a new part of my landscape and now it's part of my landscape. I'm not trying to put it out again. And well, I have the same topics with my German clients and my American clients. The challenge with the American clients is usually if they take medication, can they really feel into it? Because the medication makes you not feel it. So you are kind of like on this mid-level where you don't have these peaks. So you don't want to be really happy and you don't want to be really sad. But that is something, it's like the heartbeat, right? It goes up and down, and then you have this and up and down like this. So it's about learning to go in and out of it and learning that you're not going to die from it or it's not going to take over. It's just a part of you. And it's good to deal with that and to integrate it back into your system and then use it. And we have so many movies and books where people try the whole book to fight against this one thing. And in the end, they understand it's not my enemy, it's my friend. And then they become the most impressive people ever. So we have also role models and people showing us how it could be, but it's really hard to translate it into our lives because we think, well, I'm just a normal person. It's not going to work like that. But mostly the biggest change is where the biggest pain is. So if we learn to look at it, it's not that big anymore. And we learn to survive. And then we learn to deal with it.
You touched on it before that it's a bit harder to help someone achieve emotional freedom while on pharmaceuticals. Could you explain a little bit more of your thoughts?
Yeah. So I just want to make this straight. It's not that I'm totally against medication.
Yes.
But I have so many clients who take medication since they are 7 because their parents decided they're too this or too that. It's so easy to say this kid is too much this or too much that. What's the diagnosis? What's the diagnosis of my kid? Instead of saying, yeah, kids are wild and kids are this and that, right? And then instead of helping the kid to deal with this high energy and giving it playground to play with or go into the forest and run with it or give it a bicycle, whatever, we just put medication in and you say, you have to take this, otherwise you're going to go wild. It's not good for you. So you grow up, people telling you, if you don't take the medication, something really bad is going to happen to you. But at the same time, you've never been without it. So you also don't know, how am I without it? And then when you try it, mostly what happens is your mood goes down because we are also somehow addicted to this medication. So we have to go through a phase of, now I'm going to have to let go of the medication. So my body's going crazy. It doesn't even know how to do this by himself. And to produce certain hormones again, to come to a level where then I can actually feel what's going on with me. So if you just always kind of like work with your mood with medication, it also means you never really feel your real mood. You're always manipulating it. And that also means that you can maybe not really kick in with motivation and the positive energy and momentum that you need because you're just pushing it down and you're just calming your system chemically with this medication. So yeah, you have this, this middle line and it goes up and down a bit, but you also feel numb. So it's a huge process to get out of it. And also it's very important to be very honest to your clients to say, if you take off the medication with a good doctor who helps you to get off slowly, it's going to be hard in the beginning. And it's going to you're going to feel stuff that you haven't felt before. Right? So it's good to do this while you have your coach, because then you have someone by your side holding your hand saying, you can do this, let's go. But if you're always on medication and you identify with them, A
Yeah.
lot of people have a really hard time letting go of it. And I can only highly
Yeah.
encourage to check in how long you're going to take them if you really, really need them, and at least try it for a while to let them go while you have a
Hmm.
coach or a therapist to see what's going to happen and to make sure you don't have a therapist who loves for you to have medication.
Yes, that is a challenge. I think the identification of the disorders, at first, I feel like it's so helpful when we get a diagnosis and we are put in that, the box, or we have a label for it: OCD, panic disorder, anxiety, I'm a depressed person. At first, it's liberating because we're like, okay, I have
I have this.
I have this, and I identify with this because I'm experiencing those symptoms. But I think what I've come to learn and what I personally experienced was the identification of that disorder becomes so ingrained that we live however long with that identification that we become
Yeah.
the identity, like the disorder. And so then it harms us in the end because we are OCD, we are depressed, we are anxious, instead of we're a person experiencing these things. And let's get curious why. Because as I say till I'm blue in the face, I've learned anxiety and depression are symptoms of a much deeper root cause. And if we can get curious enough to dig deep and figure out, why do I have anxiety, depression on a deep level, like you always say, to go into it, I think we can really start to live in a world where we're reducing pharmaceuticals where
Yeah.
we can.
And
Yeah.
you said something really, it's so the medication only works with the symptoms. So the symptoms go away, but not the
Hmm.
source.
Yeah.
So it's not really a solution. It's just,
Yeah.
and I've had clients who've been so depressed, they needed medication to get out of it, at least to
Hmm.
kind of like getting out of this hole.
Yeah.
But then you have to let go of the medication as well to get back into your power. This is
Hmm.
legit. Why not? But if you every day take it, it's not, it's not really going to the root cause for you to understand what's going on with me. It's just numbing
Yeah.
and numbing and numbing.
Yeah. I had a client who I connected her to a holistic practitioner to start the process of getting off and, help with her body, and a coach. And she ended up just doing it herself and getting off. And she quickly went back on, and she explained to me everything that I stopped feeling all those years ago came back, and I couldn't handle it. And to your point, and a lot of what I really believe is, if we're not doing the work to get to the root while we're on it, we remove the band-aid and then all the symptoms come back. I think that it's safe to say, if somebody's so identifying with the depression, sometimes the medication will help them at least be able to start the process of seeing, observing, of being able to lift the veil. And in that case, medication is so helpful to then further on in the process of getting to the root. But if we're taking the medication and we're not getting to the root cause, it's simply a band-aid until we remove it, and then everything comes back.
Yeah. Something something that really helped me with that, and that I also use in my practice when I work with groups over the weekend when I do retreats or something like that, is that we build a parkour of the main emotions. And out of a sudden, you have a room where you have certain stations, and one station says sadness, and the other one says anger, and the other one
Mm.
says happiness. And the thing is to then actively decide to go there and experience and activate this emotion and get out of it again. To really kind of like open the vessel and see, how much anger do I have? What comes up when I let it all out? And I remember I was standing there like for half an hour, just letting all my anger out. And we believe so much that when we do this, the emotion comes over and there's no coming back from it. It's almost like we're gonna explode or something if we really let
Yeah.
all the sadness out or the anger out. But if you do this in a group and you realize we are all going through the same emotions, even though I'm in the part of sadness very long, I have an opportunity to get out of it, and I'm still alive. So you learn to go in and out, in and out, in and out. And out of a sudden, you learn to deal with it. And you sit, like I sit in a bus, I listen to a song, it reminds me of an old friend who died, and I'm crying. And I'm realizing, yeah, that's appropriate to cry now. But then I step out of it again when I move out of the bus, because life is going on and I'm going to survive, right? So I understand this fear as well, that when we start working with it, we're so afraid that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and out of a sudden the iceberg is like, and I'm gone. But if you have somebody by your side who helps you with that and also tells you what's going to happen next, how to kind of like adjust it, then it's a process you are in control of. And then you learn how to deal with this, and that it's normal to have all the range of all emotions.
Why do you think so much of the world suffers from anxiety and depression, OCD, these like intense emotions that are dysregulating and are the cause of, I would say, so much suffering and keeping people stuck, getting people on meds? Why do you think so much of the world struggles with that?
I don't think we don't have really good role models. We learned that you need something to help you with whatever. Every time, if this is going on with me, I need this. I have to go to the doctor. I have to, right? And there's only a few people who learn from the beginning to be in charge of themselves, of their body, of their mind, of their emotions. So I would say we are almost trained not to take responsibility for our own lives and to always look for someone to tell us what to do. And and that is also the challenge. As soon as you realize, I want to have this freedom, and you step into this moment where you have the freedom, and the picture I give my clients then is, you're the one who's now standing in the snow and there are no footsteps in front of you. You are now the one who can decide, where do I want to go? This is so freaky because nobody tells you how to do this. We are not really allowed, and we never have learned to be emotionally free and make our own choices and walk our path. So yeah, we need better role models and more of them, way more.
Well, thank you. I think in summary, I think it's safe to say we are not emotionally free because we're not taught what that means and how to achieve it. We are taught to seek outside of ourselves for the things. And so if we become these role models that we really need, which is to regulate ourselves, to take ownership of our lives, and to really be brave enough to dig deep, I think we are on track for a totally different world. And I am so grateful that you are here to lead in that journey. And so thank you so much for your fearless leadership in the new world and for your time today.
Thank you so much. It was such a blessing to be here with you today.